Greetings, explorers of the shadows and seekers of hidden truth. You are now within the portal of the unknown, where forgotten mysteries and veiled prophecies emerge from the depths of time. This is a place where words silenced for centuries finally find their voice, and the truths that were hidden begin to be revealed, challenging the perceptions that were imposed upon us. Here, nothing is as it seems, and what you believe to be reality may just be a shadow of what truly is. Prepare yourself, for we are about to enter a realm few have dared to walk. The mystery surrounding ancient writings calls us to a deep journey. Today, we delve into the hidden words of Christ and the ancestral warnings of the patriarchs. The Gospel of Thomas and the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs offer glimpses of a future marked by tribulation, transformation, and redemption. These ancient texts speak of a world approaching the end of one age and the beginning of another, where the concepts of salvation and condemnation are not merely external, but confront the human soul, exposing its shadows and revealing its deepest truths. The Gospel of Thomas, for instance, presents a vision of Christ that deviates from the traditional narrative found in the canonical Gospels. There, Jesus does not offer simple salvation through belief, but a call to inner awakening, a recognition of divinity within each human being. The Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, in turn, offers an even more intricate panorama. Each of the patriarchs gives a testimony of their life and legacy, and their words carry powerful warnings about the future of the generations that would follow them. These texts, often considered apocryphal, present us with lessons that have been set aside over time, perhaps because their teachings confronted the norms established by the dominant religion. But why were these writings silenced? What fear do such words awaken? Could the answers to these questions be directly linked to the events that would shape the last days, the much-discussed end of times? As we examine these forgotten sources, we begin to realize that they do not only speak of a distant future, but of a present that we are still living. The Gospel of Thomas, with its words of self-knowledge and inner revelation, challenges us to look within ourselves and confront the parts of our souls that remain in darkness. The Testament of the 12 Patriarchs reminds us of the collective responsibility of humanity and the consequences of our choices, not just as individuals, but as part of a cosmic web of interconnected beings. Both texts reveal that the last days are not only a physical or cosmic event, but an inner process, a judgment that begins deep within our being, in the choices we make every day. But what do these words reveal about the last days? They do speak of a future marked by tribulation, yes, but they also offer a vision of redemption, a possibility of renewal, should we be willing to accept the transformation they demand. If the mysteries contained within these words are truly heard, the final judgment may not only be a moment of destruction, but one of rebirth, where those who seek the truth will be guided by the light emerging from the darkness. These texts offer an alternative to the traditional narrative about the end of the world, an alternative that is not focused on punishment, but on awakening. And perhaps that is what makes them so dangerous to those who fear the truth finally coming to light. In Matthew 24:25, Jesus warned, "See, I have told you in advance." A clear and direct warning that still resonates today. However, the question persists, did all his words reach us? Or were some of them, perhaps the more subversive ones, concealed, erased, or distorted to maintain a narrative that aligns with the interests of power and control? This question becomes crucial when we think about the traditional gospel and the apocryphal writings, like the Gospel of Thomas. If we accept that the Christ of Thomas spoke of a deeper truth, something beyond the surface-level messages of immediate salvation, then we are confronted with mysteries that transcend institutionalized religion and touch the most intimate fibers of the human being. Perhaps what he was truly telling us, in words that were silenced or minimized throughout the centuries, was that the real spiritual journey begins with the search for inner truth. Something that requires courage, vulnerability, and above all, a look beyond the conventions. In the Gospel of Thomas, we find an unsettling phrase, "Whoever seeks continues seeking until they find, and when they find, they will be disturbed. But after being disturbed, they will be amazed, and they will rule over everything." This quotation offers a vivid portrait of a transformative journey, one in which the truth, when found, is not immediately embraced but causes an internal rupture. The search for truth is uncomfortable, often challenging, and can lead us to confront our deepest beliefs, those that we've built throughout our lives, those that have been taught to us, that have shaped us in ways we may not always perceive. Truth, when revealed, is not an immediate relief, but a disturbance, a destabilization of what we thought was real. But it is precisely in this moment of disturbance that true transformation takes place. The ego, the superficial identity we've built over the years, begins to be questioned, and with it, genuine spiritual awakening occurs. This search for truth, often rejected or feared, leads us to see humanity's destiny in a much deeper light. What Jesus warns us about in Matthew, and what Thomas reveals, is that truth is not necessarily in appearances, doctrines, or rituals, but in what is hidden, in what lies within ourselves, in the depths of our souls. And this truth is disturbing because it challenges us to let go of old beliefs, to confront our shadows, and to face ourselves in ways we don't do in our daily routines when we are distracted by the superficiality of everyday life. Yet, after traversing this disturbance, a wonder emerges, a new way of seeing the world, a new way of perceiving our own existence and the universe around us, more connected, freer, and more powerful. This is the true redemption, not a redemption imposed from the outside, but a transformation that occurs from within. From this perspective, humanity's destiny is not a distant, inevitable cosmic event, but a continuous process of transformation, where each individual, by seeking the truth, is challenged to confront the shadows that dwell in their own soul. The end of times, then, is not something that will only happen in the future, but something that is happening now within each of us as we seek, become disturbed, marvel, and ultimately rule over the illusions that once governed us. The truth that Jesus and Thomas speak of is not just a religious or theological truth, but a universal truth, a truth that pertains to all of humanity, to our collective awakening, and to our spiritual evolution. The Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, writings attributed to the sons of Jacob, is a collection of texts that, though often relegated to obscurity, offer an alarming vision of the future. These writings not only speak of the past, but seem to project a disturbing view of the future, a future that bears an unsettling resemblance to modern times. The Testaments describe a great corruption that would dominate the last days, a corruption that would affect not only the external structures, but the very spiritual foundations of humanity. The Testament of Levi, for example, presents a disturbing vision of priests corrupting the temple and manipulating the sacred practices for their own interests. Levi, in his vision, sees how religious leaders will stray from the truth, replacing pure teachings with distorted interpretations driven by power and control. The corruption of the temple is not just an institutional failure, but a deep spiritual distortion that alters humanity's relationship with the divine and with truth. This image of a corrupted temple is a reflection of humanity's departure from the original spiritual principles, which with each generation become more obscured by selfish interests and external agendas. This vision in the Testament of Levi resonates in an alarming way with modern times. In a world where institutions, including religious ones, are often the subject of scandals, abuses of power, and manipulation of truth, the words of the patriarchs take on unexpected relevance. The corruption Levi describes is not limited to those in positions of religious authority, but extends to the belief systems that shape our societies and spiritual perceptions. In modern times, we often see how spiritual truth is distorted to serve financial, political, or even personal interests, as happens in many institutions that claim to represent the divine. What was once a quest for enlightenment and connection with the sacred has, for some, become a commodity, a tool for control. Could this corruption Levi spoke of be the root cause of the issues we face today? And if the patriarchs' words, far from being mere prophecies of the past, were also a mirror reflecting the ills we still experience? The big question is, how can the forgotten words of the patriarchs connect with today's world? These writings invite us to reflect on our own relationship with truth and with the institutions that claim to represent it. Perhaps the corruption of the temple that the Testaments speak of is a metaphor for the internal corruption each of us carries. They warn us of the danger of straying from the true spiritual essence in favor of appearances and convenience. In a world saturated by misinformation, superficiality, and divisions, it is essential that we seek not only external reform, but an internal transformation, where truth is restored within our own hearts. The judgment the patriarchs predict, therefore, is not merely about an external catastrophe, but about the awakening of our consciousness, the return to a genuine relationship with the divine, where corruption no longer has a place. As we look at the modern world, it's impossible to ignore the similarities between what the patriarchs predicted and what we live today. The struggle for truth, the battle against corruption, and the quest for spiritual authenticity continue to challenge us. But perhaps, as these ancient texts suggest, the solution lies not only in criticizing external institutions, but in a profound change within each of us. The return to truth, the restoration of the temple, not as a building, but as the dwelling place of the soul, is the key to the redemption that the Testaments announce. The relationship between these apocryphal texts and biblical prophecies is unsettling, as both seem to point toward a shared destiny, a collective warning about the dangers humanity would face in the last days. However, apocryphal texts such as the Gospel of Thomas and the Testaments of the 12 Patriarchs offer a more detailed and often darker view than the canonical scriptures, like Paul's epistle in 2 Timothy. When Paul writes, "But mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days," he is, in fact, echoing a central idea that resonates throughout many ancient writings, not only in the words of Jesus, but also in the traditions that have been silenced over the centuries. Paul's urgent warning serves as a call to alertness about the moral, spiritual, and social corruption that would mark the end times, a corruption that, according to him, would affect not only religious leaders and institutions, but every individual, every part of society. In relation to Paul's warning, what Jesus revealed to his disciples in secret, as described in the Gospel of Thomas, may have been an even deeper and more challenging warning for those willing to listen. The Gospel of Thomas does not present a Jesus who speaks openly to the masses, but a Jesus who shares his words of wisdom with those ready to understand the hidden truth. In Thomas, Jesus speaks of a kingdom that is not of a physical nature, but spiritual, a kingdom that is found within each of us and can only be accessed through personal awakening. In this sense, Christ's secret, revealed only to those with open hearts and minds, appears to be a message of profound and individual transformation, something that does not align with the superficial and dogmatic interpretations that often dominate traditional religions. Could this secret, passed on to the disciples, have been a warning about the terrible times Paul prophesied? When we analyze the words of Jesus and the context of the apocryphal texts, we can perceive an interconnection. Both texts point to a time when humanity, blinded by its own illusions, would stray from the deep truth and become lost in a meaningless pursuit of power, wealth, and control. Jesus not only warned of external tribulations, but also invited us to look within ourselves and confront the shadows within our souls. The secret he shared with his disciples was not merely a warning about a distant future, but a call for immediate transformation. A transformation that could change the fate of humanity if it were truly heard. These warnings connect with the admonitions we find in John's Apocalypse, the Testaments of the 12 Patriarchs, and the Gospel of Thomas. They suggest that the terrible times are not just an external judgment to be imposed, but a reflection of the internal state of each person and society as a whole. If humanity continues to ignore the truth, the corruption that Paul and the patriarchs foresaw will inevitably take over. But on the other hand, if we are willing to hear the secret Jesus revealed in Thomas, a secret of self-knowledge, enlightenment, and true spiritual connection, we may escape the downfall these texts predict and instead experience a radical transformation that will lead us to a new understanding of life in the cosmos. The central question then is, will we be willing to heed this warning? Will we be willing to confront the internal shadows that Jesus, the apostles, and the patriarchs call us to recognize and heal? The path to salvation, as suggested by these ancient writings, may not be what we expect. It is not a path of convenience or conformity, but one of challenge, self-knowledge, and awakening, where the truth disturbs us and, at the same time, frees us. And perhaps that is what makes Jesus' message so radical and urgent. An invitation to inner transformation, which, if truly understood and followed, can save us from the terrible times Paul predicted and perhaps lead us to a new beginning for humanity. The lost words of Jesus and the warnings of the patriarchs are not merely ancient records, but powerful signs and clues left for us, a kind of spiritual map pointing toward a grand conclusion. When these texts are read with attention, they speak not only of a distant past, but cast a disturbing light on the present and future of humanity. They warn us of the dangers of spiritual corruption, the manipulation of truth, and the moral collapse that we are witnessing in our days. These symptoms are not casual nor coincidences. They are the marks of a time nearing its end, an end that is not only the physical and external collapse of civilizations, but the internal, spiritual collapse of the collective soul of humanity. Spiritual corruption, as described in the testaments of the 12 patriarchs and the Gospel of Thomas, is a distortion of the essential truth, a substitution of the divine with falsehoods that feed the ego and personal interests. In a world where religious institutions often become impersonal, commercial, or corrupt, the search for truth becomes a solitary and painful journey, yet profoundly necessary. Jesus, in sharing his secret words, revealed that true transformation only occurs when we turn inward to our own soul, confronting our shadows and reconciling with the divine within us. When the truth is distorted, when the temple is corrupted, we should not expect an external change, but an internal revolution that restores contact with the sacred, with the essence that lies within all of us, beyond appearances. The manipulation of truth, whether through religious leaders, governments, or other forms of power, is one of the greatest risks to human spirituality. The patriarchs, in warning about the corruption of the temple and the falsification of divine words, were pointing to something greater than a mere failure of specific institutions. They were foreseeing a moment when humanity would lose itself in its own illusions, when lies and distortions would become the norm, and true truth would become a rarity to be pursued, not an accessible given. This manipulation of truth is one of the most devastating forces in modern times, when we are bombarded by an insane amount of information that is, for the most part, filtered and manipulated to maintain control over the masses. In this scenario, finding the truth becomes an arduous but essential task. The question is, are we willing to seek it, to face the discomfort and disturbance it may cause, and to fight for it with courage, or will we settle for the easy, manipulated versions presented to us? Moral collapse, in turn, is the reflection of a society that loses contact with its deeper values, neglecting ethics, compassion, and justice. When we look around, we see clear signs of this collapse, the rise of violence, inequality, indifference, and exploitation. But these are merely visible symptoms of a deeper problem, which lies in the abandonment of the fundamental spiritual principles that keep humanity united. What the patriarchs and Jesus warn us about is that this decadence does not only occur externally, but begins in the minds and hearts of each of us. And if we do not act to restore these internal principles, then collapse will be inevitable, not only for societies and civilizations, but for the human soul itself. So, what remains for us to do in the face of these revelations? The first step is undoubtedly deep reflection and an honest confrontation with the state of our own souls. Instead of looking outward to the institutions and systems that seem to be the source of our affliction, we must look inward and ask, where in my life has the truth been distorted? Where has my own morality been corrupted? How can I personally restore my connection with the sacred and with the truth? True change does not begin with large external actions, but with the internal transformation of the individual, which then reflects in the collective. We need to reevaluate our beliefs, our values, and the way we live, returning to the spiritual roots that connect us to the truth and the divine. Moreover, it is crucial that we seek the truth, not as something to be given to us by others, but as something we must conquer ourselves. As Jesus taught in the Gospel of Thomas, the truth can be disturbing, but it is this truth that will set us free. We should not fear the disturbance that comes with the awakening of consciousness, for it is that which prepares us for the wonder that follows, the revelation that leads us to reign over the illusions and lies that govern our lives. The task, therefore, is arduous, but the reward is liberation, not only personal but collective. Therefore, in the face of the lost words of Jesus and the warnings of the patriarchs, the action is clear. We must seek the truth, restore morality, and allow an internal transformation to take place before it is too late. The fight against spiritual corruption, the manipulation of truth, and moral collapse begins within ourselves. And by doing so, we contribute to restoring the balance and harmony that have been lost, bringing light to the dark times in which we live. Perhaps the key to understanding what is to come and how we can prepare lies in Luke 21:36, where Jesus warns us, "Be watchful and pray that you may escape all that is about to happen and stand before the Son of Man." This passage resonates deeply as a message of urgency and preparation that transcends time. It is not merely an invitation to wait passively, but a call to action, a reminder that we must be vigilant and spiritually prepared for the difficult times ahead. What Jesus asks of us is not physical preparation, but inner preparation. Be watchful, meaning we must be attentive to the signs around us, not only in the world outside, but also within ourselves, our hearts and minds. Pray, because prayer is the path to connection with the divine, the only means by which we can receive strength, clarity, and discernment when everything around us seems to fall apart. The search for truth has never been easy, and many get lost along the way because they are unwilling to face the depth of the questions it raises. Truth, as we've seen in the apocryphal texts and in Jesus' warnings, is not something that can be easily understood or accepted. It challenges our beliefs, destabilizes our illusions, and often puts us face to face with what we would rather ignore. However, to ignore it may cost us everything. When we close ourselves off from the truth, when we take refuge in ignorance or convenient lies, we distance ourselves from the possibility of true salvation, from the chance to transcend the horrors of the last days. Truth is what sets us free. It allows us to see beyond appearances, to perceive what is hidden in the shadows, and to prepare ourselves to face the challenges that lie ahead with clarity and courage. Ignorance, on the other hand, makes us vulnerable. It leaves us at the mercy of external and internal manipulations that seek to steer us away from what truly matters. As the Gospel of Thomas teaches us, seeking the truth can disturb us, but it is that disturbance that prepares us for something greater, something beyond surface-level understanding. Awakening to truth demands courage because it forces us to confront our own flaws, our own shadows, and most importantly, the shadows of the world around us. It is a process that requires humility, but also strength. The strength to move forward even when the answers are not easy and the path seems uncertain. The invitation of Luke 21:36 then is an invitation to remain alert, not only to the events in the world, but also to ourselves. Prayer, in this context, becomes an essential tool, not as a passive plea, but as an active act of seeking divine wisdom, spiritual clarity. It strengthens us in times of trial, prepares us for decisive moments to come, and helps us resist the temptations that pull us away from the path of truth. When vigilant, we can recognize moments of weakness, points of divergence, and act with discernment so that we are not deceived by false prophets, the false truths that dominate the world. The search for truth is not an easy journey, but it is the only one that is truly worthwhile. It does not promise a path free from obstacles, but rather a deeper understanding of who we are and what the world truly is. And when we are willing to embark on this journey, to be watchful and to pray, the truth becomes our greatest ally. It prepares us to face what is to come, and more importantly, it positions us to stand before the Son of Man, ready for the transformation that comes with spiritual awakening. What happens after that, when we reach this point of vigilance and prayer, is true redemption, salvation not only of the soul, but of humanity as a whole. Thus, it is through this search, this constant effort to align our lives with the truth, that we are able to not only escape the traps of deception, but also rise above the destructive forces that surround us. Now, I ask you, have all of Jesus' prophecies reached us, or have some been buried so that only those who truly seek would find them? What truths are truly hidden in the shadows, waiting to be discovered by those willing to search tirelessly? History shows us that, throughout the centuries, many of Christ's words were silenced or distorted, often by those who feared the transformative power of pure truth. Spiritual censorship is not a modern phenomenon. It dates back to the early centuries when decisions were made about which texts would be considered sacred and which would be excluded from the Bible. So what remains for us is a fragmented version of Christ's words, a distant echo of a message that could have been broader, deeper. But the fact that these words have largely been hidden does not mean they are lost forever. The Gospel of Thomas, the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, and so many other apocryphal writings are like pieces of a puzzle that, when put together, reveal a more complete and complex picture of Jesus' message. And the most interesting part is that these words are not only found on the yellowed pages of ancient manuscripts, but also within us, waiting to be awakened. Truth, as has been said, is not something imposed from the outside, but something that must be sought with effort and devotion. It requires us to venture beyond conventions, to break through the limitations imposed by traditions, and to seek the very source of our being. This search for truth is for those who are willing to go beyond the surface, to go beyond the words we already know, and to penetrate into deeper mysteries. As Jesus said in Matthew 7:7, "Ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be opened to you." However, the search is not easy, and often those who truly seek must forge difficult paths, facing doubts, fears, and confusion. But in the end, this search brings the reward of revelation. Not an external revelation, but an inner illumination that transforms everything we thought we knew. If you feel that there is more to be discovered, if this restlessness awakens in you, the desire to continue unraveling the forgotten mysteries, then your journey has only just begun. The truth is waiting to be found, and those who are brave enough to seek it with an open heart will not be disappointed. Subscribe to the Portal of the Unknown, leave your like, and comment below, because the journey into the unknown is not just an intellectual exploration, but a personal transformation awaiting the bold seekers. The future is full of secrets, and only those who are willing to explore the deepest corners of knowledge will be able to access them.